Hello, my name is Aubrey Hanson. I am in the class Advanced Interpreting, and today I'm going to go through the PowerPoint about reading between the signs, pardon. Let's get started. First slide. Techniques for cultural adjustments. Next slide. So this chapter really focuses on vocabulary within our community. Seeing as interpreting for ASL is still pretty new, we don't have all of the vocabulary to discuss our jobs. So this will make it so that it'll be easier, hopefully, to discuss our jobs. Next slide. The first vocab word, I suppose, is waiting room chat. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Before you have your assignment, you talk with your consumer, and with just a couple questions, you can get context, use of language, and even a timeline. But this comes with a warning. All of those things that you might have gotten beforehand can change. Context, use of language, and timeline for many different reasons. Next slide. Targeted translation. So there are two main reasons that something might be interpreted incorrectly, and that be that the form was incorrect or that there was a surprise in the content. So something we can do to keep from having those mistakes is anticipation, and we can anticipate what's going to happen in a conversation, especially when it comes to questions. Like if someone's asked, how many pencils are in that drawer? We know that that's going to be answered with numbers. If someone's asked, how are you? That's going to be answered with a feeling. Things like this can really help our interpretations. Next slide is inoculated questions. This basically means adjusting questions to culturally fit so that the person who's getting the response, the person who's asking the question will get the response that they're expecting, or a format of a response they're expecting. Next slide. So this next one is signposting and road mapping. So basically what this is doing for any language is giving context to the answers or information that the consumer may not be expecting. So, say someone asks how they're feeling and they go into something that happened last week, it might be something you need to do to say, well, for a little background, something like that might clarify a situation a lot. Identifying the function. This is really hard to do because you have to understand what's going on in the conversation underlying, not just what they're saying, but also how they're saying it. And this can change culturally and personally from person to person. So it can be very complicated, but also something that we need to do as interpreters. Highlighting the point. This one, again, is pretty self-explanatory. Putting emphasis or additions into things where they need to so that anyone can understand the point of the thought. Next slide is context balancing. And this is using the language so that it makes sense and is balanced within that language. English is a linear structure and ASL is more implicit, at least that's what the book says. So being able to get those so that the sentence comes out more naturally within that language is what context balancing is. Next slide. This is back channel feedback. Essentially, this is active listening. Active listening in English is things like head nods, yeah, oh, cool, things like that. Whereas in ASL, it might be, oh, I see, wow, right, things like that. Every culture has their own, and with every culture has every different kind of feedback. Cues. Cues are, next slide. Cues can happen within any language, and sometimes they can be something like silence or vocal inflection, or even how someone is breathing. Silence in different cultures means different things. Sometimes it's a respectful thing, and even those need to be interpreted at times. Not always, because some of them are visual, but at times that does need to be interpreted. This book goes into a couple different scenarios. I've chosen 2 to highlight here. One is called My How You've Changed. That is a person coming in to see a new person, to see someone that they haven't seen in a while, and in sign language they say, "My, how you've changed." In English, that could come off as really rude, so the interpreter highlighted the point and made sure it came across properly. The next one I want to bring up is called Hint Hint. A person went into a DMV, and there were many scenarios they could do, but the interpreter noticed that the person helping them was really pushing on one, but their interpreting skills weren't strong enough to hint at it and them to actually get it, so she actually asked some questions, and in that way it was kind of context balancing. This chapter also asks us when our responsibility is over. It says that it can start before the job with the waiting room conversation, but sometimes can also go on after. It also asks if it's our responsibility to educate. The book says that it is a part of our job to educate those people of different cultures. I personally do not agree with this. The chapter continues on with many more scenarios, but I don't believe I have any more time. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye.